Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's episode of the Maritime Morning Brief, brought to you by the Marine Exchange of Puget Sound. I am your host today, Sarah, and I'm here with Executive Director Patrick Gallagher.
Hello, everybody.
And we have a special guest here with us today, Ann Avary, Director of the Northwest Center of Excellence for Marine Manufacturing and Technology, and a passionate advocate for developing the next generation of maritime professionals. And it's great to have you with us today.
Sarah, Patrick, it's wonderful to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah.
Of course.
We are really excited to just hang out today and talk about you and all the work you do. And as we were saying kind of before we started this episode, it feels like everybody knows who you are. You are the Ann Avary, but we don't always know, everything that's happening with what everyone does all the time. So we're curious to just hear about what's been going on, and maybe we'll just start with kind of your background and how you ended up in maritime. Do you have a history in maritime, or did you just find yourself here?
Well, I first of all, the Ann Avary. I don't know if I can live up to that moniker, but I'll try. That's a lot. I'm gonna have to put that on my cards. The Ann Avary. I grew up in a Navy family. My dad was a career Navy pilot and naval aviator, and by virtue of that fact, we were on or near the water quite a bit. So I grew up with a love of the water and anything that floated, and because my father was an aviator, anything that flew. So just kind of grew up naturally in that environment and
Right.
developed a love for the water, wanting to be near it all the time. I grew up on the water. I also grew up partly in the Midwest and the South. And anytime I can be near the water, that's where I want to be, which I guess is why I ended up here in Washington State. But for my
Mhm.
career, I started out with the federal government as an economist for the Bureau of Labor Statistics,
Oh,
and that took me to the banking industry, which took me to the nonprofit industry, which landed me right here at the Center of Excellence. So all of those things kind of built on themselves. My career in banking, oddly enough, as a compliance officer for commercial banking, has done more for me in this role than I can possibly tell you, because the industry is really about the bottom line. And from a banking
mhm.
perspective, banking is about the bottom line. So I like to think I bring a lot of those experiences to this role.
Yeah,
Oh, that's fantastic.
I didn't know
Uh,
that.
So so you mentioned you moved around a lot. Is this your favorite place? Is this the place where you decided to come to, or is this sort of like a default within your story?
No, I actually decided to come here when we were kids. My father was stationed at NAS Whidbey Island. And
Hmm.
so
Oh, yeah.
Washington is an absolutely beautiful place. It's one of the most beautiful places in the United States. And I've had the privilege of being many places in the US. And everywhere you go in the country, there's always some great thing about that place, whether it's Texas or Nebraska, Mississippi, Florida, Indiana, it doesn't really matter. There's always something great about that place. And Washington, I think, is really a beautiful, wonderful place to be. And I always feel lucky that I'm here. Now, my favorite place, I have to admit, is probably going to be the Florida Panhandle. Um, that's what I consider home. But Washington is. We're so fortunate to. We're so lucky to be here and to get to work in this industry and support this industry. It's really a special place to be.
Yeah, I agree. Do you get back to Florida regularly
Me too.
or not as often?
I do. In fact, I was just there. What is it? June the 10th. I was just there a few weeks ago,
Hmm.
and
Hey.
for a conference actually,
Hmm.
and I'll be back later this summer. I get to go see family and friends on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah, good deal.
That's
So
great.
I'm curious, given your position and purview, I think you have a pretty unique and uh, a real deep well of knowledge here. Like, what do you
Mhm.
think are some of the struggles that the industry is having right now? And the reason I say that is I'm hearing it
Yeah.
basically everywhere, and we both know maritime is very broad, and it's hard
Mhm.
to pin down exactly what it is, but every aspect within our membership is sort of hurting. What's your take on that?
Oh my gosh, Patrick, that is the $1,000,000 question. And if we were to translate that to a roadway, it would be a multi-laned roadway. Um, you're right. I think the first thing is, especially for the layperson who maybe doesn't work in this industry or support it the way my role does, maritime is so diverse. It's such a complex um, industry, and it's really made up of other industries.
Mm.
And you're right when you say the industry is hurting in many ways. And I could talk about a couple of examples because I think we could spend a couple of days talking about this really.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, if you divide the industry into two big buckets, the underway, the afloat side of the industry, and the shore side of the industry, which is oversimplifying. I'll say that right up front. But if we just divide it into two big buckets and we take the underway side of the industry, there are multiple factors that influence the industry, the way it operates, the employment in the industry, the competition for workforce. And so to hit on a few of those, I talk with a lot of people right now and working with industry partners and education partners around getting people in a position where they can be competitive for the underway positions that are open.
Hmm.
So how do you get somebody who's an ordinary seafarer or OS? They've obtained their TWIC card, they've obtained their merchant mariner credential, they're an OS. How do you get them in with an employer who's really looking for an AB or above? So there
Hmm.
are gaps that have to be addressed on the employment side, the workforce side, and we're actively working on that. So we have a thin talent pipeline, in part because this industry competes with a multitude of other industries for a similar technical skill base, even underway. I think the regulatory environment really hits the industry hard. The whole question around tariffs,
Hmm.
how are those going to impact the industry? When you look at ports, for example, the whole question around electrification and technological advancement impacts the industry. By virtue of the fact that I have the privilege of serving with you on a board, the Washington Maritime Federation, I am learning from you every month about shipping lanes, hazards to shipping, what mariners are concerned with. We share a border with Canada, the concerns going over into Canada, uh, what ships are facing as they come into port, how they're going out of port. So there are so many issues on the underway side that impact the industry. It's hard to try to um, abbreviate those and
Yeah,
talk about them in a really short span of time. But such an important industry too, economically,
I
not
know.
just for
Yeah,
Washington State,
I
but
know.
internationally.
It's such a cornerstone, yet
Hmm.
I feel like it's so hidden away sometimes. Like at least
It
Mm-hmm.
is.
recently, the tariffs and politically, it's in view
Mhm.
all the time, and maybe not for all the best reasons, but at least people, I think, are starting to appreciate it a bit more. But we are facing these challenges. Are there places or maybe other institutions that you think are doing it right?
On the education and training front.
Yeah, like there a
Sure.
workforce development, maybe, I don't know, pipeline or infrastructure that's working in another jurisdiction, another
Mm.
state that you know of, or because this is the part I don't see, is the higher level. I know nationally we're struggling. I'm just wondering if there is a model out there that we could start to replicate.
Oh my goodness, that is a great, great question. So of course, that's going to have a multi-layered answer.
Yeah.
So you just told me to be quiet when I've spoken too much. I think if we look in our own neighborhood, if you will, if we look at Washington State and go out from there, we're very lucky. We're very fortunate in Washington to have some outstanding programming at the 2-year, 4-year, and apprenticeship levels.
Mm.
So, staying with underway, we have Seattle Maritime Academy, which is part of Seattle Central College, outstanding 15-month program, training and preparing student technicians for a career in the underway sector. We have Skagit Valley College, another outstanding program preparing student technicians for careers on the shore side of the
Mm-hmm.
sector, whether it's boat and shipbuilding and repair, supply chain positions, whatever it might be for
Mm-hmm.
the shore side. We're also really fortunate that we have other programs emerging. So Peninsula College, for example, and for
Yeah, I heard
those
about this.
who are geography challenged, Peninsula is on the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State in a town called Port Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
serving a deeply rural community. They're preparing to start a new marine technology program. So we've
Wow.
got great examples. Grays Harbor College on the west coast of the state is looking at some options. And we have private providers too, or nonprofit providers like Crawford Nautical, the Maritime
Mm-hmm.
Institute, and the Northwest School of Wood and Boat Building, as well
Mm-hmm.
as a myriad of apprenticeship programs that serve the industry. So when you're talking about a model, I have been looking at the state as a maritime campus.
Mm.
And I think that that can be a viable model instead of looking at Washington State as these little points on a map. This is where this takes place. You got to go over here to get that. Let's look at it as a campus, and that I think is a model that can be replicable. Dale Bateman and I,
Mm-hmm.
Dale is obviously with Seattle Maritime Academy. For those who don't know, we've been talking about this for a couple of years, and we're I'm putting together an article about this. But I think approaching the state as a campus is a great model. And then when you look outside of the state, there are so many outstanding programs. You have the 4-year maritime academies, of course. Great. We've got some excellent 2-year programs all over the United States. San Jacinto College
Mm-hmm.
down in the Houston area. You've
Mm-hmm.
got the College of the Florida Keys down in the Florida Keys. Delgado Community College in the New Orleans area. You've got great programming with Northeast Wisconsin Tech up in the Great Lakes area. So, in terms of a model, I can't really say that there's a model per se to follow, but I do think that there are outstanding programs around the United States and in North America that can, if a college or a program is looking to emulate something, there are many, many great
Mm-hmm.
examples that anybody can find. Oregon Coast Community College, right down the road from us, they're getting ready to stand up a new program. So I liked what you said a moment ago about the industry is getting a lot of attention, good, bad, or indifferent in some
Mm-hmm.
cases, kind of pick the day.
Yeah.
But there is a response from the educational sector around the importance of this program and the importance of training and preparing technicians to enter the industry. That was a
Yeah.
very long-winded
Yeah.
response.
No, that's what
No,
we're here
it's
to do.
good.
So I like getting into these kinds of details that you don't normally get to hear actually. I think a lot of people make assumptions about what to do or how to do it or what's actually being done. And I know
Mhm.
personally, I always on the perimeter of this issue and hear about it, but hear about mostly the pain. I don't get
Mm-hmm.
too deep into details on solutions, and a big reason you're here is to talk about it. So long-winded is fine.
I
We need
Yeah.
appreciate
those
that.
details and stories. So um
Can I share one more thing,
yeah,
if I
Yeah.
may?
absolutely.
Yep. And I'll be quick. So through the Maritime Administration or MARAD,
Hmm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
there's a consortium of schools nationally under their Domestic Maritime Workforce Centers of Excellence, and we are
Hmm.
part of that in Washington State. We are collectively coming together, these schools all over the United States, to form the National Maritime Workforce Alliance. So as you're
National
talking
Maritime
about models,
Workforce Alliance.
yeah, that's right, and it's very, very new. It's very
Mm.
new, but I'm hoping that that's something that I'll be able to share more about in coming days. We're just now coming together as a group to going back to the comment or the part of your question earlier, is there a model? We're
Mm-hmm.
trying to come together to create such a model. It's a long
Yeah.
way to go yet, but I think it's important to share that those types of initiatives are underway.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was also recently
Most
in Port
definitely.
Townsend. You mentioned the
Mhm.
the Wooden Boat Center, talking about Blue Schools Initiative. They had like a symposium, a lot of people in the
Mhm.
room, and that was pretty exciting as well. And the way they
Mhm.
described it was similar, but it was very it feels like it's just starting, which is
Yes.
a lot
Yeah.
of good opportunities, for it to grow and for people to get involved. Because I know there's a lot of
Mhm.
impassioned people out there in this community, also very concerned.
Mhm.
Yeah. Uh, uh,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could share maybe a success story or two, something that you've seen work well in your work.
Mhm. Absolutely. A couple of examples. One is more focused on the shore side of the industry.
Hmm.
We've partnered with a couple of other industry sector partners on a welding framework,
Mm,
and it's a K-12 welding framework that will
mm,
bubble up to the post-secondary level. But the idea around this is to create a more level playing field around access and inclusion for students from all communities in Washington state, and an awareness of welding careers, whether it's in the
Mhm.
maritime industry or other industries. The importance is getting students aware of these career opportunities in rural communities, urban communities, and suburban communities.
hmm.
And this is important because we nationally have a significant shortage of welding professionals
Mm,
across all industry sectors. And if you look at data from the American Welding Society, I don't have the number right off the top of my head, which I should, but there's an anticipated need of about 337,000 welders nationally by
what?
2027. Somebody's going
Wow.
to have to fact check me on that, across industry sectors. And so we developed a project. We call it MAC. It's Maritime Ag and Construction. We
Mm,
created this model welding framework, and it's with the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction now. It'll be approved, and we want to get these frameworks into every school in the state that has a metals or welding program. And then that, of course, bubbles up to the community and technical college level as well, because that pathway for welding has to begin at the K-12 level. So it's been a success because we have industry involvement and support. We have the frameworks completed and submitted. We've created a welding pathway map. We have the support and alignment with the American Welding Society. So everything is standards based. And I think this is an example, it's a good example because it's illustrative of how much work goes into doing something like this, but it also, the potential impact is quite significant. And when you look at Washington as a maritime state, we build a heck of a lot of boats and ships here, as well as repair and maintain them for the public sector and the private sector. And if you look at the hybrid ferries that Washington State Ferries wants to build, if we get some of those contracts here, those are significant job creators. And I know that this is
Mhm.
somewhat political, but if you look at the newly formed Office of U.S. Shipbuilding
hmm.
and the desire to expand the U.S. Navy fleet, as well as all of the support fleets, Washington is going to be at the epicenter, I dare say, of a lot of boat and ship fabrication, building and
Hmm.
repair. We
Hmm.
need to focus on welding. We have to focus on that skill set.
Wow. Okay. Well, shout out to
Yeah.
my nephew, Ryan, because he's a welder. He works
Oh,
for Safe
excellent. Hey,
Boat.
Ryan. Oh, he worked at
He's
Safe
been
Woo.
Boats?
working
No
there
kidding.
like 7, 8 years, a long time. But yeah, it was an interesting path. I thought it was brilliant because he went through Olympic College in Bremerton and got a 4-year
Mhm.
degree alongside a welding certificate. Went to work at Safe Boat, you know, building aluminum boats, and it's a great job, great life, and didn't really have to, from my purview, sacrifice much. I mean, he still came out with a 4-year college degree from an accredited uh, community college. No loans, none of that stuff at all. I was like, that is such a brilliant way to do it.
I
Yeah.
think that
I've
is
actually
awesome.
heard a
And
few of
and
those
um
too.
and you know, Olympic has a fantastic welding program. And then Safe Boats is just one of the best builders in the state. They
Yeah.
are a real success story, and they are fantastic to work with.
Yeah.
So
Great. That's
that is
good to hear.
amazing. Great story. Yeah, they're a fantastic company. And I would say for the other success story, I'll be brief. I would
Mhm.
go back to Peninsula College,
Mm.
recognizing the leadership of the college, recognizing the need to serve a deeply rural community in their service district, and taking that leadership stance and starting a marine technology program. So I would give a big shout out to Dr. Ames, the president of
Mm.
Peninsula College, because that's a big risk to take.
Mhm.
And but they have a very deep maritime industry on the Olympic Peninsula, and it is growing. And
Mhm.
so to be able to develop a program and commit to providing access to education and training in deeply rural communities is very significant. I would call that out as a success as well.
Beautiful. I ask everybody this. So, um, I know what we're doing at the Marine Exchange, we're trying to do, but what are your thoughts? What do we do? Just more of what we are doing?
I think, Patrick, I think it's and somebody might hit me over the head for saying this, but I think it's less about the money
Mhm.
than your leadership position at the Marine Exchange,
Mm.
influencing direction, legislative direction about the importance of investing in maritime education and training and access across
Mhm.
communities. I really think it's less about the money or writing a check than
Mm.
influencing legislative decisions and direction. I really do
Mm.
believe that,
Oh,
and
okay.
creating access points for youth and young adults from all communities. Demographically, we're changing very rapidly as a country, which is to be expected. And
Mhm.
by extension, our workforce is changing very rapidly. And I think, would love to get your take on this. I mean, I think the maritime industry has long been a legacy industry where, families have been involved in the industry for generations. Um,
Mhm.
but that is really changing. Kids
Mhm.
now know they can go a lot of different directions, and this industry literally needs everyone. So it's that awareness. It's about, the maritime industry is such a phenomenal industry. There's so much opportunity. You can
Yeah.
do so many different things in this industry and have a wonderful career, have a family, live a really fulfilling life. Your nephew, look at what I mean.
Yeah.
He's at Safe Boats. Ryan, he's my hero today. But I think it's the awareness and access and helping our legislators understand just how important this industry is economically, socially, culturally, what it brings to this state. That's what I would say. It's like I said, somebody would probably hit me over the head for saying it's not so much about
No.
the money, it's really about influencing our legislators who have a
There
lot
there
of
Yeah,
a lot of people are knocking on their door all the time, but just helping them understand how important maritime is.
Yeah,
for sure.
I that makes a lot of sense. I had not heard anyone say it quite like that, so I love that. I appreciate it. It feels
Thank you.
like, we're really talking about a cultural moment too in this
Mhm,
country. Things have changed. Uh,
mhm,
but I honestly believe it's ready to come back. I remember I've got my own experience, but I remember being drawn to this really for the adventure. I didn't grow
mhm.
up around water. I grew up in Montana. So, but I just saw, I don't know exactly. I think I got on a boat once. And yeah, now I remember. I was in South Korea. I was working as a teacher and I got on a boat. I'd never been on salt water in my life. And that was it. I was like, this is it. I definitely have to do this. And
And you were
I think
hooked.
just getting that
Yeah.
axe and just being drawn to adventure, something different, not
Mhm,
wanting, the desire to not be bored is
mhm,
is really what got me. And I think
Mhm.
you're right. The more I, sort of consider your words, I think you're right, Anne, where, we've got to provide that influence, those
Access.
mhm,
stories and show, young people what is attainable, that you can make an entire
Mhm.
life, a good life out of this crazy industry.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, you could be a baker. Um,
Yeah, it's
obviously, you
true.
can be a welder and a fabricator. You can be a pilot. You can be so many things in this industry, and it's waiting for all of these communities to come into it, and it needs every single community. And I like what you said about adventure and not being bored. My thing is if you're bored by the maritime industry, then it might be time to find a line of work. I am never bored, ever. There is not
Me
one
neither.
day where I'm bored because you are always learning something new. And Washington is we are lucky enough to live in a state where maritime is extremely important. It's such a dynamic space to be in. And like I said,
Yeah.
I get to serve on a board with you every month. I'm listening to you or Jordan or Chad, and
Mm.
I'm amazed by what I get to learn from you guys.
Yeah.
You know, and then I get to go apply that in my work.
I think it's
This is more fun than you imagine.
yeah. No,
$100%.
I'm absolutely with you. Like every time I feel like I'm wrapping my head around things, I get
Mhm.
into something brand new, meet somebody who blows my
Yeah.
mind, who's done something
Mhm.
I never heard of or has applied skills in diverse and innovative ways that I frankly, it's like you said, it's almost like, well, where would you like to take this? And I get
Mhm.
really excited about it, like you, which is cool on the Federation because those are our peers, right? We get to share
Mhm.
that and then try and figure out ways to export that. But just because I get really excited about it because it's given me so much.
Mhm.
And when I look at young people or anybody really, even if you're like going to do a career shift, a mid career, um, there there's so much there, and it's provided me personally with so much that I'm very motivated to try and break people out if they're struggling. And there's a lot of struggle in this country, so it's like,
Oh,
come to
yeah.
us, we
Yeah,
can absorb it. That's how I feel.
absolutely. You can find a direction in your life in this industry, and I'm not saying you can't in other industries because clearly you can, but the diversity of opportunity in the maritime industry is so amazing to me on a daily basis. If you're struggling with direction, this industry can really help you out. Maybe you won't stay in it for the entirety of your career, but what a great
Yeah,
place to
maybe
start.
not. I agree. Oh,
Seems like
that's
it's
that's a lot.
hard for people to leave though.
It is a
They
Yeah,
little
never
bit of
do.
a yeah,
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 It's sticky for sure. But
yeah.
I think that I think I'm finally reconnected here. I was having issues connecting, but I just keep
yeah,
thinking about I think one, yeah, getting the legislators involved is like so important.
Mhm,
And then the last piece, it's like the money, the legislators, and then it's how do we connect to, like you said, all those communities who are
mhm,
not the legacy communities. And I feel as though we sit in so many rooms where people are talking about this. And I say it every time I talk about this discussion is like we sit in so many rooms where people are concerned about this and they're talking about this, but then they're not
mhm,
either taking the next step to talk to their legislators or not
mhm,
taking the next step to like go meet the young individuals. So like how are
mhm.
you guys tackling that issue of like getting to the actual young people? We've learned through these podcasts that like swimming programs actually have a huge influence on like people getting into the
Yeah,
industry, just the random sailing
true.
class that they
Mhm.
took or saw. How do you find the best ways to connect with the different communities? Is it the different age groups, the different regions, just your approach?
I like that question, Sarah. Thank you. I don't think it's a one size fits all proposition.
Definitely not.
You, one, and this is going to sound trite, and I don't mean for it to, but if you really love what you're doing, and I do, and I really believe in this industry, it's almost easy to talk to different groups and different communities and share what you're excited about. And
Mhm.
there's that part of it, just human to human. reaching out and trying to engage. I don't think you can discount the value of that. But also amplifying other voices is really, really important.
Mm.
So we do a blog with Ebony Wellborn and Savannah Smith from Sea Potential,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
their voices and their young leadership, what they're bringing to the table, and working with youth from communities of color and other underinvested and under-resourced communities to bring them into what does working on or near the water look like? What is maritime about? And being a platform for those voices and supporting that, I think is very important. Uh, but but I think by and large, the number one thing is you cannot be afraid to engage. I mean, I think we all share this a passion for the industry. Just sharing that in a very genuine way can make a big difference. But also from a project perspective, doing things like the welding frameworks and other things
Mm-hmm.
like that that are supporting awareness and access and inclusion and reaching communities that might not have been reached otherwise. And I will say part of that for younger learners, the K-12 level, it's making an investment in faculty professional development. So you
Mm-hmm.
can support the faculty engaging with their students. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so it's it's a multi-layered approach. And one day one might work brilliantly, the next day the other one might crash and burn. You have to keep going back over and over again, and you just cannot quit. I think
Mm.
that sounds almost cliche to say, but it's the absolute truth. This is
Yeah.
you have to keep going back to communities and groups and saying, hey, we're still here and the doors are open. And if you'd like to learn more, I would love to share that with you. I have a colleague, Sam Kaplan, from the Global Trade and Supply Chain Center of Excellence. And and he's brilliant on trade. And he's always saying, we're talking to a parade of people, not just one person. And, it's not one and done, it's all the time. And you have to continue to do that. So I think,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that really answers the question, but it's being consistent about the
Yeah.
outreach. It's really, really important.
Yeah. I think we're learning that even just in general, yeah, with all the news and all the discussion and the random things that are popping up is just like the consistent unified maritime
Yeah.
message, it seems. We're learning that too. Okay, my next question. I was really excited to hear about the welding program and how that's going. I think that just makes me wonder, not that truly you have plenty on your plate, but what's your like next dream project that you would love to get going?
Oh my goodness. I actually have one that I'm working on right now
Yeah.
around submersible ROVs, remotely operated vehicles.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I would like to see a program around that started. It's definitely cross sector. Clearly, it has many maritime applications, but this is something that you're going to see more and more of in the natural
Mm,
resource sector, obviously the energy sector. But I see a real nexus there with marine electronics and
mm,
quite a bit of opportunity there. And from an awareness and bringing people into the industry, getting them curious about the industry, this is
Mm-hmm.
technology that a lot of young people, youth and young adults, okay, I can relate to that. I can do
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that in the maritime industry. I can do hull surveys. I can do hydrographic surveying. I can do kelp studies and be part of this industry and do something that interests me and work with interesting technology. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one of them I think that I feel pretty passionately about. And
Yeah.
then marine fuels.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real geek answer, but I think the whole area of marine fuels is absolutely fascinating. It's going to grow and evolve. I don't even think we've hit the tip of the iceberg with it yet.
Mm,
And we're well positioned as a state to be at the center of that conversation and drive a lot of what happens there.
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
see
Wow.
that too.
Yeah.
That's fun.
We're
Yeah.
we're trying to get better at this, and I think these
It's
conversations
doing great.
are really helpful. Uh, and just for background, we the Marine Exchange have always been, like I said, on the sort of the perimeter but we surveyed our members last year, and this was, I don't know if I've told you this or not, but um, it was the most unambiguous response that we got out of all of our questions. And we have a
Mhm.
diverse membership, and it was number one, it was unanimous. 100% of responses said this was their top issue, workforce development. And that shocked us a little bit, to the point where we sat down and said, we've got to do more. Like, it's clear to us that is now, and we're even thinking of it as a safety issue. And I'm that's not original. I actually got that from Canadians. Our
Mhm.
counterparts on the Harbor Safety Committee in Canada treat this as a safety issue, and that's, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but it's true. When you start to analyze it, it's like, no, this is becoming acute, especially if we are going to expand as a country in a national interest. Like, we've got to put a lot more behind this.
I totally agree. I think safety is one of the biggest issues in this industry, and you have only to look at, uh, I can't remember the name of this ship that's burning off of the coast of
Uh,
India right now.
mhm.
With the it's an EV fire, I believe. So
There's
obviously
two ships burning that I know of. One's
Yeah.
India, and then Alaska.
yeah.
Yeah.
So safety is absolutely paramount. And when you look at the way technology is changing in the industry and driving a lot of the activity of the industry, safety should always be that foundational piece. Uh, and that's another, Sarah, you were asking me about what another big area for me. I think safety goes hand in hand with everything that we're doing programmatically. It has to be embedded in everything,
Yeah.
whether you're shoreside or afloat. There's no
Mhm.
substitute for it.
I
Yeah,
agree.
and I think again we're in Washington really well positioned to help lead some of
Mhm.
those things. I feel like we already are. A lot of the
Yep.
programs and precautions and measures that we go above and beyond, yeah, positions us well to keep doing that and be at the forefront of some of those things.
And I think the
So,
Marine
Anne,
Ex real leader in that space. I
wow,
mean, I
thank
really
you.
do. I think you all
That's
are
great to
very
hear.
no, I really
That's great
believe
to
that,
hear.
because I follow you all. Um,
Mm,
uh, no, I think you have a really important voice with regard to
Thank
yeah,
safety,
you.
obviously with
thank you.
regard to workforce too.
So we're coming towards our time here. So I have a couple of questions,
Sure.
and if you want to think about it for a minute, that's totally fine.
Okay.
But we like to ask this question. So a lot of people ask, what keeps you up at night? It's always like anxiety-driven society, right? But I want to know what gets you skipping down the road every day. What brings you joy?
Well, the first answer is my family. That's,
Uh,
that always makes me happy. And then in my work, I get to work with a lot of great people,
mm,
and I know how lucky I am. I really do.
mm,
I think I'm one of the luckiest people on the planet, and I get to work with wonderful people, you all, others, and I mean, I have no complaints in life. I feel very fortunate. I have a great family. I have a great job. I get to work with great people. Um, and I finally found a plant in my front garden that the deer won't eat. That's a big one.
Woo!
Yes, that I feel like
That's
that's
pretty
great.
impressive, actually.
that's fairly significant. So yeah, I finally cracked that code
Congratulations.
because everything else, and I love the deer, but they would mow it down. So yeah, I feel like, I have, and this is, and I don't mean to be flip by there because this is a really stressful time for a lot of people, but that also reminds me how fortunate I am. And so I'm very grateful for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a beautiful way to wrap this up. But
think
if someone
so.
wanted to reach out and connect with you, what's the
Mhm.
best way to do that?
Email is probably the best way, and that's Ann, ANN dot
Hmm.
Avery, AV as in Victor, ARY at Skagit, agit.edu. Email, I'm very responsive to email. That's probably the best way to reach out and get to me.
Great.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming to join us today, Anne.
Thank
This was
you.
really fun.
I enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
it's
I
good.
hope I did well. It was a lot of fun,
You did
and
great.
I've been
You
looking forward to this
absolutely
for a
did.
while. So thank
Good.
you.
Yeah, we
very
finally got
much.
around to it. I'm
Yeah,
so glad.
thank you.
With that, thank you all for joining us for today's special episode of the Maritime Morning Brief, and we look forward to seeing you all again bright and early tomorrow morning.